digestion. What were the molecules after digestion?
Carbohydrates.
Molecules after digestion was what?
Amino acids,
glucose and fatty acids. So 3 types of molecules I am talking about, which are present on the outer wall of the villus. Outer wall of the villus. Now, absorption, if you remember the concept of absorption, yes, absorption is happening and the molecules from the cavity of the intestine entering into the villus. This was what we studied as absorption there. Do you all remember that?
Yes,
so now, if I'm talking about absorption, excuse me. If I'm talking about absorption, now I would say that this process of absorption is applicable only for glucose and amino acids, but not for fatty acids. Why? Because now that we are already aware about the word lymph and the lymph vessels, inside the villus also there are some lymphatic channels. Inside the villus also there are blood vessels. Additionally, lymph vessels are also there. And now that I understand that where will these fatty acids go? If I talk about fatty acids, are these fatty acids directly entering into the blood? No, the fatty acids are entering into the lymph first. The fatty acids are directly entering into the lymph and then they go to the blood. Can these molecules, now that they enter the lymph, can they go and meet the blood? Yes. Are you following what I told you just now? If it is the fatty acid molecule where? Inside the intestine. Now I talk about the reference of absorption that you studied. And I'm saying that if this is the cavity of the intestine and these are the individual villus that we draw, the individual villus, what about the fatty acid molecules? They will also undergo the process of absorption. And this is what we are talking about absorption as. Entering inside the villus is absorption. But now I need to differentiate this way. By differentiating this way, that is the process of absorption little bit different for the fatty acids and glucose and amino acids? Yes. Then how is it? For the glucose and amino acids, they directly enter into the blood vessels. I am talking about absorption. Then what about the fatty acids? The fatty acids will first of all enter the lymph vessels and then they will go and meet the vein. This particular diagram to follow. Understanding what I'm saying here?
Yes, ma'am.
So if I mention that the lymph helps in absorption of fat, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that correct? So now there is a third function that we always understand. Now with reference to the villi, at that time I did not mention this because unless and until you are aware about all these things, difficulty understanding this concept at that time. Now that you already know what is lymph, yes, lymph vessels are also present inside the villus. And now talk about the absorption of the glucose and the amino acids. Now talk about the absorption of glucose and amino acids. Glucose and amino acids can directly enter into the blood. Can the fatty acids directly enter into the blood? No. They directly cannot enter into the blood.
Yes.
Because of the properties of the blood vessels, etc., etc. Many things are there. Right now, understand, the blood cannot directly pick up the fatty acids. Then how will the blood get the fatty acids? The blood will get the fatty acids by the way of the lymph. The blood will get the fatty acids, but from the lymph. And at the level of the villus, the lymph will pick up the fatty acids, give it to the blood of the vein, and then it mixes up. So what is the third function I'm talking about? The third function that I'm talking about is absorption of fat. Did you understand what I spoke just now? Absorption of fat is also a major function when we talk about the lymph. Absorption. P is absorption. So we are going to write down now the functions of the lymph. Write down 3 functions of the lymph. Of course, to remember, there is one more function, drainage. I'm going to speak on that. Mentioning that as a point, if you remember, of course, Otherwise, that is an optional point for you. But first of all, let us write down the points. Functions of the lymph I am talking about now. The 4 functions of the lymph, let us mention. Functions of the lymph. Functions of the lymph. Number 1. What is the first function of the lymph? The first function of the lymph is, number 1 is to write distribution of nutrients. The first function you will write distribution of nutrients. Second function, absorption of fats. Very good. Third function क्या लिखेंगे? Defense. अभी देखो राजदीप कितना अच्छा फॉर्म में है. And fourth function I told you, drainage. I'll explain it. What is the meaning of this drainage? Complete करो all the 4 functions: distribution of nutrients, distribution of absorption of fats, defense, and drainage. Now, with reference to drainage, you are just to understand this way that if the lymph, now say suppose we are not engaging ourselves in physical activity, physical activity nahi hai, muscle contraction is not there, then what happens? The lymph vessels are not contracting, relaxing, because the lymph vessels will contract only when the body activity is more. So when the body activity is lesser, then what is happening? The lymph vessels are almost steady. The lymph is not flowing. Those parts of the body, and at that time, certain parts of our body start suffering from swelling. Majorly the face, the feet, the legs, they start swelling up. Especially the leg regions start swelling up. Why? Because of the accumulation of the lymph. So when we are constantly engaged in physical activity, the lymph is constantly moving and taking away all the necessary and unnecessary substances also towards the site of excretion, the kidneys. So that is what we are talking about as drainage.
The varicose veins.
No, varicose veins are absolutely different condition. So swelling, when we talk about the ankle part swells up, the ankle part swells up, the leg region swells up, the face swells up, different parts of the body swelling up. That is not associated with fatness, obesity, only because of the accumulation of the lymph. So this also would generally happen. Now, at that time, what is happening? The necessary and the unnecessary substances, the plasma should always get drained into the vein and the circulation continue. तो जब body movements कम हो रहा है, then the lymph is becoming more or less stagnant हो जा रहा है. So वहाँ पे जब accumulation ज़्यादा हो रहा है, the parts of the body starts swelling up. तब drainage function कम हो रहा है. This creates pressure on the kidney and many other things. So the 4th point हम लिखेंगे drainage. Drainage of what? Drainage of nutrients. The nutrients and the plasma, the drainage of the fluid, the drainage of the plasma and the nutrients, or unnecessary waste substances. So drainage of the plasma consisting of variety of waste substances. Waste substances such as other drainage honi chahiye and to move at the site of excretion, the kidneys. They should go to the kidneys in a very short period of time.
So on drainage is just basically the movement of like waste or need.
Drainage, we are talking about the movement of the plasma, but
the excretion.
कौन से वाली substances फटाफट drain होना चाहिए? The waste substances. So what is the function you write? Drainage of the plasma consisting of waste substances. So we are majorly talking about the drainage of the waste substances. So these are the functions of the lymph that we understand now. So after the basic concept of body fluid, now we try understanding that what are those organs which are very much associated with the pumping of the blood, the movement of the blood, the structure of the heart that we are going to understand now. So looking into the basic structure of the heart, to talk about the structure of the heart, we'll have to learn what are some of the specialized parts, functions of the heart. Let us start talking about the human heart. the human heart, now that I talk about our heart, that is the mammalian heart, that we understand, the mammalian heart. Now this mammalian heart that we are talking about, are you able to see from there? Now the mammalian heart that we are talking about, what are some of the features? As we start talking about transportation, and now we talk about the process of circulation, and with circulation definitely the heart a major organ. What are some of the specialized features? Now that I talk about the human heart is also considered as the mammalian heart. Why the word mammalian we are using? Because a major feature of the mammals or the heart of the mammals is heart is made up of 4 chambers. That's the first feature to start with. The mammalian heart, when we are talking about what are some of the features, the mammalian heart has 4 chambers. Mammalian heart has 4 chambers. Let us talk about the chambers first of all. What are chambers here of the heart to understand? Chambers means?
So you can say that
Human heart is also the basic mammalian pattern we are talking about. Mammals, which are some examples of mammals you can tell me?
Dolphin,
Platypus or dolphin or
elephant,
blue whale. छोटे examples, छोटे animals. Mammals छोटा भी तो होता है. हाँ बताओ. I'm going to ask you every 2 minutes. I'm going to ask you one question. Every 2 minutes, I'm going to ask you one question. Keep your brain cells alert. Give me examples of mammals. Last year diversity नहीं पढ़ा ना तुम लोगों ने. ऐसे तो ज़्यादा loss नहीं हुआ, but ये basic चीजें तुम लोगों को नहीं आती. Examples of mammals or apart from the नहीं,
can we say birds?
नहीं, birds are apes.
dogs.
Birds are apes. Now, dogs, correct. All these small animals, bats, the dog, the bat, the rat, all these are also mammals. Mouse, all the rodents, mammals, monkeys also.
Ma'am, I said mammals.
Did you say monkeys? I did not say no. Did I say no? Okay, now. क्या हो गया उसका क्या explanation?
There are the 5 kingdoms.
You did not study, no, that chapter.
No, I said we had even I said.
Fifth में था ये CBSE में.
No, just नहीं bad education class का तो somebody's 5 kingdoms.
Which take us 5 class में. अच्छा. So now, when we are talking about the concept of mammalian heart, let us start with this concept. We are saying the heart is 4 chamber. Now, see those terms. Get acquainted with all the names. Not to write any spelling wrong there. The terms. When we are talking about the mammalian heart, what are these chambers? The 4 chambers, upper 2 and lower 2. I talk about 2 chambers of the heart, the upper 2 chambers and the lower 2 chambers. Now, when I talk about the upper 2 chambers and the lower 2 chambers, see here when we talk about what? Yeah, this is better. You'll understand better with this. Now, when we are talking about the 2 chambers of the heart, 1 and 2, these are the upper chambers. The upper chambers are known as the atrium, also known as auricle. Atrium, also known. Don't write anything. कुछ लिखना नहीं है अभी. I will give you what to write. यहाँ पे store करो खाली. What are the upper 2 chambers known as? Upper 2 chambers atrium या तो auricle. Lower chambers ventricles. Lower chambers are ventricles. Now we are talking about the 4-chambered heart. Then what is so special about the 4-chambered heart? Between the right and the left side, the upper and the lower region, there are some small, thin, muscular walls. Muscular walls को क्या बोलेंगे? Septum. The muscular walls are known as septum. Now these septum, meaning these are muscular walls between the right and the left, and the upper region and the lower region. Because of this muscular walls present separating the entire heart into 4 regions, the mixing of the blood nahi ho pata. The mixing of the blood. Now mixing of blood meaning in this right side of the heart, the deoxygenated blood enter. Now the deoxygenated blood is here, and the deoxygenated blood will enter from where? From the body parts. So a part of that concept you had studied in respiration. If it is the body tissues are releasing carbon dioxide. Did you study that? As the blood vessel run through the body tissues, blood oxygenated होता है कि deoxygenated होता है? टिश्यू रेस्पिरेशन के बाद जो ब्लड लंग्स की तरफ जा रहा था दैट वाज deoxygenated. क्यों? क्योंकि टिश्यूज प्रोड्यूस कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड. So that same reference, now that already you know the concept of respiration, I am assuming that you know. But काफी लोगों का चेहरा देख के मुझे बहुत डिप्रेशन हो रही है right now. You remember what we learned in the class last week? रेस्पिरेशन का कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं क्लियर रहेगा तो ये जो मैं बोल रही हूँ ये काफी चीजें नहीं समझ में आएंगी. And then you will sleep like him. उसका गुड मॉर्निंग हुआ है अभी. फर्स्ट लेक्चर से 5 क्वेश्चंस उसको पूछो, कुछ नहीं आएगा उसको. पूछो आस्क हिम वन क्वेश्चन. अरे बाप रे, चांस मिला तो कोई नहीं पूछेगा. उनको भी पूछने के लिए बोलती हूँ मैं. हाँ वो पूछेगी. आई एम नॉट आस्किंग यू एनीथिंग. मैथ्स सर ने भी सेम चीज बोला है.
What is the fundamental unit of lungs?
अरे क्या पूछा? ये आप पूछा भी तो क्या पूछा?
हो गया अभी फिनिश.
Same maths को पूछना.
नहीं मैथ्स नहीं, बायो का ही पूछो. वो
Name
उसका
2 specialized features of an organism that carries out aerobic respiration.
ये बुक खोल के बैठा है.
चल वो तो आज ही तरह है. वो तो पता है.
एक भी टेस्ट में मैंने देखा कि आउट ऑफ दिस टेस्ट नाउ दैट हैपेंस किसी को भी बिलो 50% मिला ना, आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू अलाउ यू इन माय क्लास.
कितना होगा?
बिलो 50% किसी को भी मिला मेरे क्लास के अंदर बैठोगे नहीं. दैट इज वेरी सिंपल.
क्लास टेस्ट.
एवरी टेस्ट नाउ दैट हैपेंस. स्कूल के एग्जाम के जो मार्क्स है वो याद करके आना. Whenever we ask, वो याद नहीं रहता. At that moment you all forget everything. हाँ? क्या बोला?
कोई तो जान होता पूछेगा. क्या?
He can answer. वो सो रहा था तो सुनेगा क्या? देना. Okay, so what are the 2 upper chambers I told you? The 2 upper chambers are known as atrium or auricle. Lower chambers are known as ventricles. No other name. No alternative name for ventricles. Ventricles. Now we generally name it this way: the right auricle, the left auricle, the right ventricle, the left ventricle. Now this is the heart. When I look at it, this is the heart. Take out the diagram of the heart in your volume there. Take out the diagram of the heart in your volume and look at that diagram. Page 147. Look at the diagram, all of you. Your right hand side is the left side of the heart. Yes or no?
Yes.
Your right hand side is the left side of the heart. Check the diagram. Your right hand side is the left side of the heart and your left hand side is the right side of the heart. So it is something like we place the diagram on our body, so that way. When you are labeling, when you are given this diagram for labeling in the exam, don't take your right hand side as the right side. Your right hand side is actually the left side of the heart. So you are more or less, this is my answer sheet. Now this is how I place it on my body. तो ये हो गया, this is the left side and this is the right side. Confirmation. आया समझ में? किसी को doubt है? So now this is how you understand that which one should I label right auricle, which one should I label left ventricle. Place it on your body. Now your left side is the left side of the diagram, right side is the right side. So I take this particular structure, and now try to understand which is the left side, which is the right side. So this is the right side of the heart, this is the left side of the heart, the right auricle, left auricle, right ventricle, left ventricle. The right side of the heart, you see blue vessels are shown here. Blue refers to deoxygenated blood. Now in this diagrams you'll always come across shown this way. The blue and the red. Blue always means deoxygenated, more amount of carbon dioxide. Oxygenated always shown in red, more amount of oxygen. Now in this case, I talk about the first chamber is the right auricle. Listen to me. When I talk about the right auricle always receives deoxygenated blood. Blood which is rich in carbon dioxide from the body tissues by the way of big veins of the body. One set of veins from the upper region of the body, the head and the neck and the shoulder, and another set of big veins from the lower region of the body. But whether it is the lower or the upper region, both the big veins of the body will pour the blood into the right auricle only. So which is that chamber which receives deoxygenated blood from the body parts? Right auricle. दोनों एक ही है. Now the right auricle. Now this right auricle or the right atrium is filling blood. After a particular period of time, the right auricle will start contracting. But by that time, when it starts contracting, some small muscular walls. What are these small muscular flaps known as valves? So these valves are something like gates. So now this blood, which is now filling here, after a particular period of time, the blood has to run down. So when the blood has to run down, these small flap-like structures, which were relaxed and closed, now they start contracting and opening. They are contracting and opening up, and a passage is formed now, and the blood rushes down from the right auricle to the right ventricle. Understanding? So what is the first part I am talking about? The first part I am talking about the right side of the heart. What type of blood does the heart carry on the right side? Deoxygenated. You know what is the meaning of deoxygenated blood? So ये deoxygenated blood कौन से chamber में आके fill हो रहा है? Right atrium. From where does it come? From the body parts. From all the body parts. But from the body parts, hundreds of veins will come out. These hundreds of veins always unite to form these big veins of the body. One big vein from the upper body and one big vein from the lower body. There are names to these veins, but the names are not mentioned in your book also. But when I give you the flow chart, I will give those names. So you may take it if you remember, right? So these big veins are known as the vena cava. The vena cava from the lower body, the vena cava from the upper body. What type of blood is the vena cava carrying then? Always deoxygenated blood. Here I talk about one pair of valves, muscular flaps between the right auricle and the right ventricle. And what are these muscular flaps known as? Tricuspid valve. Tricuspid valve. Now, this blood which is filling in the right ventricle, after a particular period of time, the right ventricle cannot accumulate any more blood and it will also start contracting. So now, before we talk about these concepts of the chambers of the heart also, as I said, that if I now start looking into the functions of each of these chambers, before we go to the left side, we were talking about what are the chambers now then we have. We have got the right atrium. What are the features of the right atrium? The features of the right atrium is receive. What is the function? It receives deoxygenated blood. It receives deoxygenated blood by the vena cava. Receives deoxygenated blood by the vena cava from the body parts. From the body parts. So from the body parts, all the deoxygenated blood will be brought by a whole lot of veins. Now we'll talk about the vena cava later again when we talk about blood vessels. What are vena cava? Broad veins of the body. What are the basic differences between the word veins and vena cava? Always remember, veins will unite to form the vena cava. Veins unite to form vena cava. So this is the first thing we are talking about, the right auricle. Now, the right auricle or the right atrium always receive deoxygenated blood. What now next? After the right atrium, we were talking about the right ventricle. Let us talk about the second chamber. What is the second chamber? The second chamber is the right ventricle, the right side of the heart we are talking about. The blood from the right auricle will enter into the right ventricle. So what is this right ventricle receiving? It receives deoxygenated blood from where? Right atrium. Receives deoxygenated blood from the right auricle or the right atrium. What type of valves are present between the right auricle and the ventricle? The valve known as tricuspid valve. Remember. Then what should be the function of such valves? Now, when we are talking about this tricuspid valve, once this blood is filling up here and the blood has to move down, the valves I just now mentioned, the valves always contract and become shorter and the passage is open and now the blood can rush down. But at the same time, when small amount of blood has rushed down also, immediately the valves will relax and shut down, close down again, preventing the backflow of the blood. It never happens unless and until we talk about some abnormalities. Never it happens that whatever amount of blood has run down from the auricle to the ventricle again goes back to the auricle. No, that does not happen. Under normal conditions, that does not happen. What would have happened if this type of a feature would have been there in our heart? Supply of oxygen to the tissues would have been much lesser. The energy supplied by the tissues would have been much lesser. So, in our heart, the four-chambered heart that we are talking about shows a unidirectional flow of the blood. एक बार blood यहाँ से यहाँ आ गया, the blood will never go back. So, what is the job of the valves here? Prevent backflow of the blood. And that is always we are going to come across all throughout the circulatory system that we study. And ये एक common function जो हमेशा पूछा जाता है, and you have to write it this way. What is the function of this tricuspid valve? Prevents the backflow of the blood from where to where?
Right ventricle to right atrium.
So what are some of the features of the right ventricle? Then we understand the right ventricle receives deoxygenated blood from where? From the right auricle. What is the valve present at the junction of the right auricle and the right ventricle? The valve known as tricuspid valve. But from this
What is the function of tricuspid valve?
tricuspid valve will always prevent the backflow of the blood. It will always prevent the backflow of blood. Now that I talk about the backflow of the blood, diagram dekho and then try understanding backflow of the blood from where to where it is preventing?
Right ventricle to right atrium.
Right ventricle to right atrium. Clear hai? So now till the right ventricle, we are now talking about the blood in the right ventricle.
Ma'am, there is no other function of right atrium. It just receives the deoxygenated.
There is one more. We'll talk about that also. There is one more function. Receiving the blood, only one specific function. Apart from that, also the right auricle has one more function. We'll talk about that later. First of all, we complete this particular cycle. Tricuspid. C-U-S-P-I-D. Tricuspid. Tricuspid. Tricuspid meaning it has got three pocket-like structures actually. So what I mentioned, the right ventricle always will allow the blood filling gather from the right auricle and then the blood is now entering into the right ventricle. But now, when we are now understanding that the blood has to flow from the right ventricle, now the right ventricle is filled with blood. After a particular period of time, the right ventricle also cannot accommodate any more blood and the right ventricle will start contracting now. Now that the right ventricle starts contracting, Where will the blood flow now? From the right ventricle, if I continue, where will the blood flow? The blood will now flow into the pulmonary artery. From the right ventricle, where does the blood flow? From the right ventricle, the blood will flow into the pulmonary artery. So first of all, I am saying the blood flows from the right auricle to the right ventricle, and now from the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery, the blood is flowing. Talk about the pulmonary artery. What are some features of the pulmonary artery to again remember?
Carries blood away from the
What are some features of the pulmonary artery that you should remember? This pulmonary artery features would be carry what type of blood? Deoxygenated. It is carrying deoxygenated blood. From where to where? From where to where? From the heart to, from where to where? With respiration, you have studied this.
Yes, ma'am.
From heart to lungs. It is carrying blood from heart to the lungs. Now, come again to understand this figure. So, we were talking about that this blood, the blood in the right auricle is deoxygenated. This deoxygenated blood rushes down to the right ventricle. Which valve? Tricuspid. Tricuspid valve has to open up. Blood rushing down. As the blood is rushing down, filling the right ventricle, after some time the right ventricle has to contract. Now that the right ventricle contracts, अब जो tricuspid valve shut down, relaxed and closed, the blood cannot go this way. The blood has to find a pathway. How does the blood move? Where does the blood go? The blood goes to this vessel. Which is this vessel? An artery which arises from the right ventricle. Which is this artery which arises from the pulmonary artery? Pulmonary artery arises from the right ventricle. What are some of the features of this vessel? This vessel, see, it is shown in blue. What type of blood does it carry? Deoxygenated blood. Where will this blood go now? This blood will now go to the lungs. And do you remember the concept of gaseous exchange that we have studied? Now this particular vessel or the pulmonary artery will break up into a large number of arteries. The pulmonary artery will break up into a large number of arteries and supplying blood now to the lungs. Supplying blood to the lungs. So now, if I talk about what would be the function of these lungs now, the function of these lungs would be to supply oxygen. To supply oxygen. The same thing that we had studied earlier also. Say suppose I understand that this is one blood vessel. I understand that this is one blood vessel and this blood vessel is carrying blood here. Now this is, first of all, which blood vessel I'm talking about? This is the pulmonary artery and it has got the blood. Already you had studied the lungs give away a whole lot of oxygen and the blood progressively now it is becoming what? It is now becoming oxygenated. Then which vessel am I supposed to name this as? Which vessel am I supposed to name this as? Pulmonary vein. So this vessel where the blood is progressively becoming oxygenated, this particular vessel is now the pulmonary vein. Then which are some of the features of the pulmonary vein? Now we try understanding. Okay. First of all, I mentioned these features, yes.
Ma'am, in the function of gaseous exchange, we had seen that the oxygen which goes out from the lungs, it gets absorbed by the tissue cells. So the blood does not have oxygen right now, right?
Here, when I am talking about the blood which is passing by the lungs, meaning the blood which is passing by the lungs is constantly gathering oxygen. So the blood which passes by the lungs, which was deoxygenated, is becoming oxygenated. Now this blood, when it goes to the tissues, definitely it will supply oxygen to the tissues and pick up carbon dioxide.
So it will again get deoxygenated.
It will again get deoxygenated and again it will come near the lungs. And again constantly pick up
When does it
oxygen.
go to the heart?
this particular veins, when I now talk about this pulmonary veins, these veins will go to the heart. These veins will go to the heart.
So it will separate.
It will separate. When we are talking about this particular relation between the pulmonary artery and vein, now that you understand, the pulmonary artery goes past by the lungs, picks up oxygen. This is what we are majorly talking about, oxygenation. And the blood is gradually becoming oxygenated, and this blood will go to the lung, to the heart again. See this figure again. We are talking about the right side, and now with reference to the pulmonary artery. From where does the pulmonary artery arise? Right ventricle. From the right ventricle, now the blood enters into this tube, this vessel known as pulmonary artery. Where does this pulmonary artery carry blood to? It is carrying the blood to the lungs. What is the process happening at the level of the lungs when this vessel will break up into a number of tubes and the tubes are running very close to the lungs? What is happening to the blood? The deoxygenated blood is getting changed to oxygenated. And all these blood vessels which unite together near the lungs to form a big vessel. What is this vessel now known as? Pulmonary vein, which is carrying the blood back to the heart again. But to which chamber? The left auricle. To the left auricle. Is this clear? So I talk about the pulmonary artery which was carrying deoxygenated blood. Keep the diagram always very close. Try to understand this diagram. The diagram that you have in your book also. Once you know the diagram, then only we will draw it. Otherwise, you will not understand which part to draw. So we are talking about the pulmonary artery carrying deoxygenated blood. Gradually, the blood getting converted to oxygenated. Which vessel? Now the pulmonary vein. Now talk about the pulmonary vein. Where is the pulmonary vein carrying the blood? It is carrying oxygenated blood to which chamber? Oxygenated blood to the left atrium or the left auricle. Now what is the job of that blood? Now where will the blood move on? The blood from the left atrium has to go down to the left ventricle. The blood from the left atrium has to go down to the left ventricle. So now, if you see,
Study about the valve there, like the valve over there, the mitral valve. You know,
I'll tell you, I did not finish. No? Now, when we are talking about this, the left auricle, this is. So the left auricle is receiving what type of blood now?
oxygenated blood.
By which vessel? Pulmonary vein. Now this vessel again, once this vessel fills in blood, it will start contracting. Another pair of valves, and what are these valves now known as? These valves are known as bicuspid. These valves are known as bicuspid valve, also known as mitral valve. Mitral valve, optional for you. If you remember, good. Otherwise, only bicuspid, tricuspid, you can write. Not a problem at all. Now, this left auricle, once it fills in blood, it will push the blood, pour the blood into the next chamber, the left ventricle. But for that, the valve which should open up is the bicuspid valve. Then what is the function of this bicuspid valve?
It allows the movement of.
What is the function of the bicuspid valve? Check the figure and tell me.
Ma'am, it does.
What is the function of the bicuspid valve? Check the figure. What I told you? Same for the tricuspid, I told you. No? Tell me what is the function? Prevents from
the left ventricle
From the
to
left ventricle to the left atrium.
from the left ventricle to the left atrium. Remember, you will be asked like this: what is the function of the valve? You will be given the diagram, parts mentioned, and the functions. You should know the functions. What is the function of the tricuspid valve? I told you, prevents backflow of blood from here to here. What is the function of the bicuspid valve? Prevents backflow of blood from here to here. Understanding?
yes
Clear? So now we talk about that the blood has come down to the left ventricle, and what is the nature of the blood? What is the type of blood in the left ventricle? Oxygenated. The blood is oxygenated. Now that the blood is in the left ventricle and adequate amount of blood has filled in, can it go back to the left auricle? Why not? Once this chamber has filled in, can the blood go back to this chamber again? No. Why it cannot go? Bicuspid valve will close down. So prevent backflow. Backflow kabhi nahi hota. So the backflow cannot happen. But then this blood has to go somewhere. Where will this blood go now? It will enter into the aorta. This blood, which is oxygenated, will enter into the aorta. What is aorta? The largest, the broadest artery of the body. So this particular blood from the left auricle will now enter into the broadest artery of the body, the largest artery of the body, known as the aorta. It will enter into the aorta, but this aorta is carrying what type of blood? It is carrying oxygenated blood, and this gets divided to form a large number of arteries. And that's the reason we say arteries are those vessels which carry oxygenated blood. Then these arteries will again supply blood to all the body parts. So the body parts, that is how the body parts are always getting the oxygenated blood. But if I continue, then I should also write that on the other side of the body part, what? Because they are getting oxygenated blood and they are converting the blood to what type? Deoxygenated. Now the blood is becoming deoxygenated, and this has to be carried by a whole lot of veins, and these veins will unite to form what? The vena cava, and vena cava will drop the blood where?
In the pulmonary.
Vena cava will drop the blood where?
Right atrium.
Right auricle. Right auricle. Check this and tell me, did you understand what I have written? So right from the aorta, where is this blood going? Right from the aorta, this particular aorta is the biggest artery of the body I'm talking about, which will divide into large number of arteries. Some going to the stomach, some going to the kidneys, some going to the intestine, some going to the muscles, some going to etc. All parts of the body. But from all parts of the body, a large number of veins will emerge out. What type of blood does the veins carry? Deoxygenated. Always. Veins always carry deoxygenated blood. But what is one exception?
Pulmonary vein carry oxygen.
The pulmonary vein is an exception. And I also told you right now that the arteries always carry oxygenated blood. What is one exception? The pulmonary artery is an exception. Is the pulmonary artery carrying oxygenated blood? Deoxygenated. Exception. Pulmonary vein carrying deoxygenated blood? Is the pulmonary vein carrying deoxygenated blood? Oxygenated. Is that an exception now? All veins of the body carry deoxygenated. Pulmonary vein is an exception. All arteries of the body carry oxygenated.
Pulmonary
Artery is an exception. Is this followed? All of you following this? So now we reach till the vena cava, and the vena cava will always drop the blood where? Right auricle. So here, looking into this particular diagram, now we try understanding the entire process of circulation, taking the lungs also together, because whenever we are talking about the process of the purification of the blood, the oxygenation process, the lungs is the main organ which is bringing about this job. So here we are talking about the entire process of circulation, but let me just show you one more figure, and then again we are going to understand some more features about the process of circulation. What I told you just now is about this concept, the process of circulation of the blood. See here, we are talking about another process. A process, what we just now understood, is known as double circulation of blood, and which is a feature of the mammalian, which is a feature of the human. Why the concept double circulation? Why is it known as double circulation? Because the blood always enters the heart twice. Once right side, go to the lungs, and again come enter the left side. and then leave the body. Any amount of blood, any particular period of time, any amount of blood, if we check, yes, the blood is first of all entering from the body parts. The blood is entering from the body parts. In what form? Deoxygenated form. Enter the right side. From the right side, go where? Lungs. From the lungs, get
Back to the heart.
oxygenated and back to the heart. But now, left side. Does the mixing of the blood ever happen? Why not? Presence of septa. Septa. What is septa? Muscular wall. Dividing wall. The muscular wall between the auricle and ventricle, and the two auricles and the two ventricles.
Ma'am, what would happen if the wall was not?
If the wall was not there, then every time the mixing of the blood, तो ये जो blood तुम्हारे tissues में जाता, the proportion of oxygen much कम हो सकता था, and the proportion of oxygen कम मतलब body energy would have been much lesser.
So the ज़्यादा भी हो सकता था.
कैसे ज़्यादा होगा?
मैम क्योंकि oxygenate
ज़्यादा कभी नहीं हो सकता है, because the blood is constantly getting deoxygenated. If adequate amount of blood is not reaching your tissues in an oxygenated manner, our objective is, we are mammals, our oxygen demand is very high as compared to other different type of animals. As compared to other different mammals also, we human oxygen demand is so much. As compared to an elephant, as compared to a horse, our oxygen demand is maximum. Because we are constantly moving, we are constantly talking, we are constantly running, we are constantly working. जो other mammals के comparison में भी हमारा oxygen demand सबसे highest रहता है. So the objective is यहाँ पे oxygen कितना मिल रहा है. If the oxygen supply here is less, energy supply is less. That part already you have studied. Oxygen के साथ energy का क्या relation है? I'm repeatedly telling you, oxygen supply tissues में कम होगा तो energy supply भी कम होगा. Which process am I talking about?
respiration.
उसको क्या बोलते हैं? उस प्रोसेस को, रेस्पिरेशन को स्पेसिफिकली क्या बोलते हैं? Which is that process which is associated with oxygen supply and energy release? What is that process? Cellular respiration. Super. So when we are talking about this, तो energy body cells में more and more oxygen release होना बहुत जरूरी है. जितना oxygen उतना energy. Oxygen कम, energy also will be much lesser. ये कब होता है हमारे बॉडी में? जब oxygen कम होता है and energy भी कम release होती है. When does it happen in our body? Oxygen कम हो रहा है, at the same time the release of energy is also much less. When does that happen? Sometimes it happens. कब होता है? नहीं. कब होता है?
Ma'am, when you are constantly
Three pathways of glucose breakdown.
when you are constantly
Whenever constantly muscular vigorous vascular activity, तब oxygen deficiency हो जाता है body cells में, energy release is lesser. What is that compound form? What is that compound formed in the muscle cells जिसकी वजह से हमें cramps होती है? Lactic acid. आ रहा है समझ में? ये relation याद रखना पड़ेगा. So now, what is this process that we talk about? ये जो process that we are talking about, that the blood is entering the heart twice. एक बार oxygenated form में blood enter हो रहा है on the right side. फिर by the way of which vessel? Pulmonary artery, lungs में जाता है and the blood is getting oxygenated, and then again coming back into the left side by the way of the pulmonary vein, and then out of the body, out of the heart by the way of aorta to reach the body cell. ये है हमारा body organs. This is the heart and this is the lungs. Are you able to understand the figure? A similar figure you have in your textbook also, talking about the process of double circulation. Which page is that? Textbook? 92. There's a similar figure in your book also, and you will have to understand this concept. What is double circulation? The chambers, the valves I already talked about. Keep those figures in your book. All these figures are important, not for drawing. This diagram not for drawing, but for diagram-based questions. Diagram of the heart only for drawing. That we will take up. Exam में आता है. Diagram of the heart, elementary canal, respiratory system. So far, you'll have to draw. Now, this part, any question? We had already talked about the chambers, the valves, and the pulmonary artery, the pulmonary vein, the aorta. Now, if I ask you, give me one difference between pulmonary artery and pulmonary vein, what will you write? जिसको पूछा गया, only that person will answer. Yes. Difference between pulmonary artery and pulmonary vein. Give me any one difference. What did you understand from
the
this?
pulmonary artery carry deoxygenated blood from heart to the lungs.
Superb.
And the pulmonary vein carry oxygenated blood to the left
Atrium.
atrium.
So what is the basic difference you understand? Pulmonary artery hai, so the pulmonary artery is carrying deoxygenated blood from heart to lungs. Pulmonary vein, oxygenated blood from lungs to heart. Very specific if you remember the chambers. Very good. Chambers agar hai, then what should I say? The pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs. Or pulmonary vein hai to lungs to the left auricle, atrium, left atrium. Okay? Now this is the basic difference. What is the difference between the right side and the left side of the heart? The right side always carries deoxygenated blood. The left side always carries oxygenated blood. What is the difference between the tricuspid and the bicuspid valve?
It has 3 layers and it has 2 layers.
That is not written in your book. That I gave it as a book.
Backward.
One difference. Tell me tricuspid, bicuspid.
One tricuspid valve is in
Talk about the location. Where is
yes,
tricuspid?
bicuspid valve is in right chambers.
Nahin? What is the location of the tricuspid valve between tricuspid valve? What is the location of the tricuspid valve between
The
Right atrium and right ventricle.
between right atrium and right ventricle? And what is the location of the bicuspid valve? Between left atrium and left ventricle, the bicuspid. Clear? All these points are clear? The basic structure, the valves, pulmonary artery, aorta. What is the difference between pulmonary artery and aorta? Pulmonary artery and aorta. Can you tell me one difference? Pulmonary artery carrying blood from
the lungs to the heart.
nahin. Pulmonary artery, I asked you.
The heart to the lungs.
Lungs. Deoxygenate. And aorta from heart to body parts. From heart to body parts, and it is oxygenated. Clear? Is it clear? Look into the diagram of the heart that you have in your book also. The same diagram we have to draw. But before that, we also have to look into that chambers. We are already done with the chambers, and now a little bit more we have to learn about
there was one more function of
right atrium. Okay, now what is the other function of the right atrium if I have to mention? The right atrium, on the wall of the right atrium, on the inner wall of the right atrium, there is a set of muscles, and these set of muscles are known as the pacemaker. What is the meaning of pacemaker? From here, from the wall of the right atrium, the process of contraction starts. So what is pacemaker? It is the site from where the contraction of the heart starts. From where the contraction of the heart starts. From where the contraction of the heart would initiate. It initiates or starts. So that is always known as a pacemaker. You must have come across people who suffers from certain type of heart disorders, and they go for implantation of pacemakers, artificial pacemakers. So now, whenever we are talking about what is this pacemaker, we all have the inherent, the natural pacemaker in the right auricle. So what is this right auricle? What is this pacemaker doing? It is a group of muscles. What type of muscles is the heart made up of? Cardiac. What is that one special feature of that cardiac muscle?
Voluntary.
So as and when the blood, जैसे blood fill हो रहा है, it will contract. Do we have to do anything for that? Can we speed up the contractions, lower down the contraction? No.
Right now, yes.
Right
Doing
now?
actions.
तुम कैसे कर रहे हो?
Like doing simultaneous actions like running and everything.
No, you are not able to control your heartbeat at all.
Not controlling, but you can increase or decrease.
कैसे? बता कि दिखाओ blood pressure 180 लाके दिखाओ.
मैं like doing exercise.
अगर ये possible होता तो nobody would have been suffering from hypertension. जिनका भी blood pressure 180 निकलता फटाफट वो लोग कम करके 120 में लेके आ जाते. We cannot control our pumping of the heart. The pumping action of the heart we cannot control. So now whenever we are talking about उसको अभी low blood pressure की problem. गुड मॉर्निंग. अभी इस क्लास में गुड मॉर्निंग की प्रॉब्लम है. अभी पहले इसको जगाया फिर उसको. तुम लोग ब्लैक टी शर्ट पहन के आया ही मत करो.
देखो ब्लड प्रेशर है वो अगर रोज टाइम में एक्सरसाइज करेंगे सही टाइम पर सही चीज करेंगे तो फिर मेडिसिन लेने की जरूरत नहीं है.
बट एक्सरसाइज खाली एक्सरसाइज से नहीं ना. सी
लाइक कंट्रोल का
पूरा
हर चीज
control.
फॉलो किया कि ये
A person who is already suffering from blood pressure for 5-10 years, उनको एक्सरसाइज खाली एक्सरसाइज से it will not be regulated. जिनको blood pressure 140 है, that person may go for exercise and control करके 135, 30 तक रख सकता है. But a person because of many other problems in the body, जिनको blood pressure 180 है, 170 है, वो खाली regular walking से वो 35, 40 तक कभी भी balance नहीं होगा. For that medication की जरूरत है. Now what is this? What are these medicines doing? वो heart walls को relax करता है, so that the blood can flow smooth. So that's why I told you we have to increase our body activity, more and more of walking, more and more of physical activity, ताकि हमारे lymph vessels, heart walls flexible रहे. अरे क्वेश्चन भी है उसका.
मेडिसिन लिए पर अगर लिवर हमारे बॉडी का एक्टिव नहीं रखा तो मेडिसिन देने का कोई यूज नहीं है.
और मेडिसिन लेके बॉडी का एक्टिव मतलब
आपको एक्सरसाइज करना चाहिए अगर ब्लड प्रेशर का प्रॉब्लम
ज्यादा.
अगर हमने सिर्फ मेडिसिन यूज की और बॉडी को ज्यादा एक्टिव नहीं रखा तो मेडिसिन का कोई यूज नहीं होगा.
मेडिसिन जो तुम ले रहे हो, if a person has already blood pressure of 170, तो अब तुम्हारा क्या एक्सप्लेनेशन? मैं ऐसे करता हूँ. What is your age? Age क्या है? I'll come to you. Age क्या है? ये याद रखना है. ये याद रखना है और बिहेवियर भी उस तरह की होनी चाहिए. एज क्या है? 5 की 50? होने वाला हूँ. तो बोलने के लिए अच्छा लग रहा है 15. बिहेवियर वैसा है. हाँ, तुम्हारा क्या डाउट है ना? If a person is having blood pressure 160, 170, that person is only taking medicine morning, night, no physical activity. Then what will happen? The medicines also does not effectively work on the body. Blood pressure कम होगा by 5 units, by 10 units कम होगा, but this will not keep his other organs function. So we can take medicine, but along with medicine, the best is always keep on increasing physical activity. हाँ, but ये possible होता है. Many people suffering from blood pressure, they may have major problem in their bones. So they are not able to run, they are not able to do any physical activity. तो उनके body में blood pressure कम होगा, certain other problems will increase. Only with medicine, our body will never run that effectively. So now, when we are talking about the pacemaker, what I told you, these are specialized group of muscles where on the wall of the right atrium, what does it do? Spread the force of contraction. Initiate and then spread. It is something like the ripples. Ripples पता है? जैसे तुम कोई pond का कोई lake के सामने बैठे हो, किसी के साथ. And then you are just throwing some stones. एक दो stone pebbles तुमने फेंका. What will happen? Ripples initiate in concentric lines. एक जगह से शुरू होगी, it spreads and spreads. So exactly that way the process of nerve impulse conduction happen here. You will learn in coordination that particular chapter. How does nerve impulse flow? So as of now, I only tell you that it is something like starts from one point and then spread on, and then spread on, and then spread on. So इसी process से the other auricles and the ventricles, सारे entire heart will start contracting. Then what is the contraction phase of the heart known as? Contraction, take down these words. The contraction phase of the heart is known as systole. The relaxation phase of the heart known as diastole. So I'm saying that whenever we talk about the right auricle, this is one additional function to understand. The right auricle initiates the force of contraction. Spreads all throughout the heart, one by one, spreads all throughout the heart. Now, we were going to talk about vessels. We are yet to talk about the vessels and learn some major differences between them. And then we will draw the diagrams. What are the different type of blood vessels? Let us try understanding the three major types of blood vessels. We talk about blood vessels now. What are blood vessels? Blood vessels are tube-like structures which carry blood from one region to the other. Blood vessels. What are the different types of blood vessels? One is arteries, the second veins, and third capillaries. So now when we are talking about the three types of blood vessels, what are the three types of blood vessels? Artery, capillary, veins. Artery, veins, capillaries. Now whenever I talk about arteries, one or two differences again. When I talk about the arteries, what did we understand? Don't write it. This you'll have to write it in a tabular form. Full 5 differences तुम्हें याद आना पड़ेगा because there's a big paragraph on arteries and veins in your book also. What are the major differences between arteries and veins? Let us try understanding. What are those differences? I may talk about 5 differences, arteries and veins. If it is an artery, what is this artery doing? Listen first and then you will start writing. If it is an artery, what did I tell you? Arteries will always carry blood from
body.
heart to the body. And if it is the vein, from the body part to the heart. That is always. Whether I talk about the pulmonary artery, maybe heart to other body parts, heart to lungs. And if I talk about the pulmonary vein, what is it doing? Is it bringing the blood back to the heart?
Yes.
It's taking away from the
Pulmonary vein, you listen first. Pulmonary vein, is it bringing the blood back to the heart? Pulmonary vein blood को लेके आ रहा है ना body में, heart में. Artery, aorta, is it carrying blood away from the heart?
Yes.
Pulmonary artery carrying blood away from the heart. Pulmonary artery away from the heart. Aorta away from the heart. Pulmonary vein into the heart. What about vena cava? Into the heart, because these are all veins that we talk about.
Also, you said that pulmonary vein and arterial exception.
Exception, nature of the blood that they carry. Direction of flow same ही है. What type of blood they are carrying? Only there is the exception. So second difference क्या होगा? Artery and vein. I talk about an artery. If I have to draw an artery, how should I draw? If this is the artery has walls and the inner lumen it has got thick wall and the lumen, meaning the inner space is narrow. The artery has got thick wall, inner space narrow. Comparatively, if I am drawing the vein, I will draw the vein something like this, where the inner wall, the wall is thin, the wall is not thick. And what about the lumen? The lumen is much wider. That is the second difference always to remember. When I talk about the artery has got narrow inner space. Inner empty space को क्या बोलेंगे? Lumen. तो wall thick है, lumen narrow, wall thin, luminous wide. Because of this, the third difference again, I already told you that the wall is thick, and what this side, the wall is thin. Because of this difference, the third difference is because of this, the blood which is flowing in an artery is always at a very high pressure. If space come here and the heart is constantly pumping the blood, the heart is constantly throwing the blood into the aorta, but हर एक arteries का inner space जो है वो कम है. So that's the reason the blood is flowing at a very high pressure. What about this side? काफी inner space बहुत wide है. And on top of that, the blood is coming from the body parts. So कोई pumping action कुछ है नहीं. So what is the force of the blood? Will it be higher than the artery? Will it be higher than the artery? No, much lesser hoga. So the pressure is less. The pressure of the blood is much lesser. Did you understand this point what I'm speaking? I say that since the arteries are directly related to the heart, no, the aorta and then the arteries. Sare aorta, when it divides into 100 tubes, those 100 tubes are the arteries that we are talking about. Aorta is constantly taking the blood away from the heart. So blood pressure in the aorta is very high. Pressure of the blood in the aorta is very, very high. So obviously in all the other arteries also very high. And एक तो है pumping action and दूसरा है the narrow space. So ये दो reason के वजह से the blood in the artery flows at a very high pressure. अब veins to compare, हमारे legs में से जो blood आ रहा है, the blood which is coming from our legs, from our head, from our neck, from our shoulder, from our hands, is the blood at the same pressure like the aorta? No, because the blood is just coming from the body parts. The blood is at a lesser force, mild flow. The blood is flowing slowly when it is moving towards the heart, and on top of that the tube is wide, wide tube है. So there is no reason where the blood should rush. वो rushing force कुछ है ही नहीं blood में. So the blood in the vein is always at a lesser pressure, much lesser pressure. Understand? And on top of that, if I also add on this point, that why is the blood in the artery flowing at a very high speed? Because most of the arteries of our body are below the heart, so the force of gravity is also working. And if I talk about the veins, most of the veins are carrying the blood against the gravity and putting it into the heart. So iski wajah se bhi the pressure of the blood in a vein is always much, much lesser than an artery. Now next, what is the type of the blood? Already we have understood the fourth point. The type of the blood that the arteries carry, oxygenated, and exception is pulmonary artery. Veins carry deoxygenated blood, exception is the pulmonary vein. And the last difference, the fifth difference, are we able to understand which is the blood of the artery or the vein whenever we go for tests? Yes, we can, by the color of the blood. Now, if at all you had gone for some blood tests, or if you have seen your parents going for some blood test, the blood is always taken from the veins of the body. The veins of the body. And the blood that is collected in those vials are quite dark. If you see the blood in your veins here, it appears blue. But actually, the blood blue hai nahi. It is only because of the skin proteins jo blue dikhta hai. It looks blue. But it is not blue. But these are the veins. These are the veins jo skin ke surface mein rehta hai. And now check out the blood from here. Check out the blood from these vessels. Is it blue? No, it is dark red. The blood in a vein is dark red. Why dark red? Because it is carbon dioxide rich.
Deoxygenated.
Exactly. The blood in an artery is light red. Why? Because it is oxygenated. Oxygenated blood का color हमेशा थोड़ा light red रहता है, and deoxygenated blood always dark red रहता है. Let us write down the 5 differences. between arteries, veins, chambers. Already I have understood what are the chambers, their functions. Next is you already understood. Yes, tell me any doubt? Confusion hai? All of you can see your veins here, but can we see arteries? Are these vessels arteries? No, none of these vessels are arteries. Arteries are deep inside our body. Arteries we cannot see. Make a table, artery and vein, differences between arteries and veins. 5 major differences between arteries, veins, you should remember. Write down. Make a table, differences between arteries and veins. क्या हो गया?
इसके ऊपर vein है, तो उसके यहाँ से blood लेंगे, तो उसके ऊपर है या फिर जो की तरफ
ब्लड हमेशा यहाँ से लिया जाता है. क्यों? दे आर टेकिंग द ब्लड ऑलवेज फ्रॉम द वेन्स. आर्टरी से ब्लड ले ही नहीं सकते क्योंकि आर्टरी से डीप इनसाइड द टिश्यूज रहता है. सो व्हेनेवर दे टेक ब्लड फ्रॉम द हैंड, दिस और लेग, कहीं से भी, दे आर एक्चुअली टेकिंग द ब्लड फ्रॉम द वेन, क्योंकि वेन सुपरफिशियल रहता है. वेन इज ऑलवेज ऑन द सरफेस ऑफ द स्किन दैट यू कैन सी. हाँ, क्या हो गया? इसका वेन हिल रहा है. इसका पहले तो उसका हाथ तोड़ के लाया कहीं से. चलो फटाफट लिखो डिफरेंसेस बिटवीन आर्टरीज एंड वेन्स. उसके बॉडी में तो वो वेन्स ही तो दिख रहा है. ऊपर से कहां से गिर के क्या हो गया तुम्हारे? What happened to your hand? हाँ? It fell down. क्यों? क्या सोच रहे थे तभी? That you went absolutely out of balance. हाँ? चलो, we'll write down the differences between arteries and veins. नाम फिर से क्या नाम? राजदीप. वो थोड़ा दुखी लग रहा है. दुखी लग रहा है. यहाँ का वो चार्म उसका नहीं मिल रहा है ना. Nice. No, he also needs company. He was also alone, no there. पहले वो इतना सीरियसली सुन रहा था, अभी वो नॉन स्टॉप हंसते ही जा रहा है क्योंकि वो उसको एंटरटेन कर रहा है वापस. Okay, now differences between arteries and veins. The first difference, the first point, artery, the blood is light red in color. Artery, blood is light red in color. For veins, what will you write? Dark red in color. Blood is dark red in color. Blood is dark red in color. Number 2. Arteries carry blood away from heart. Carry blood away from heart to the body parts. To body parts. Away from heart to body parts. Veins carry blood. क्या लिखना है? From body parts to earth. Next, that is for artery. Veins carry blood from body parts to the heart. Veins carry blood from body parts to the heart. Understand what you are writing. Carry blood from body parts to the heart. Number 3. Arteries carry oxygenated blood. Arteries carry oxygenated blood except pulmonary artery. Carry oxygenated blood except, check the spellings. Don't write wrong spellings. Carry oxygenated blood except pulmonary artery. For
oxygenated blood
except except pulmonary artery. For veins, you will write carry deoxygenated blood except pulmonary vein. Carry deoxygenated blood except pulmonary vein. Number 4, for artery, blood flows at a high pressure. Blood flows at a high pressure. Other side, vein, blood flows at a low pressure. Blood flows at a low pressure. Last, arteries. For arteries, you write they have thick wall. Arteries, they have thick wall and narrow lumen. Check that word, Lumen. Within bracket, you may write down as of now to understand the difference, the inner cavity. Lumen means the inner cavity. Arteries have thick wall, narrow lumen. Veins, thin wall, wide lumen. 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 अच्छा, एक पॉइंट बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है बट मैं भूल गई, so we'll have to take that as a 6th point. जो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, लेना ही है. But which is that point? Thin walled and wide lumen. एक structure which is present in the veins and not in the arteries. Now that we try understanding, it is the valves again. Now say suppose we are talking about the blood vessels. When we talk about the blood vessels, the section, if you have to talk about the section of the artery and the vein, what are valves? I told you, muscular flaps, which we have come across in the heart itself, inside the heart. Which are those valves? The tricuspid, the bicuspid. वैसे pulmonary artery and aorta के base में भी valves होता है. We'll learn. No, they are known as semilunar valves. We'll write that flow chart later next day. So that time you will write it down again. No, but to understand that, are these valves only present in the heart? No, the valves are present also in the veins. Valves are not only in the heart, but valves are present in the veins. Now tell me, I already told you, I talk about the veins which carry blood from the feet to the heart. The blood is moving slow. The blood is moving slow. The blood is moving against gravity. So, is it possible if I talk about this valve here, I talk about this vein here, which is taking the blood from the feet to the heart, and the blood जो move हो रहा है, obviously the blood is moving at a very slow pace. Exactly. Pressure बहुत कम है. Since pressure बहुत कम है, are there chances that the blood may backflow again?
Yeah.
है, possible है. So अगर backflow हो रहा है, then the blood moving from the feet to the heart may take hours also, maybe half of the day, maybe the entire day also. हो सकता है. But no, that does not happen. The blood even from our toes reaches our heart in few minutes. The blood from our toes reaches our heart in few minutes. The blood from our fingertips reaches our heart in few minutes. How is it possible? Because look into the inner wall. Which is this vessel I am drawing? I am drawing the inner wall of the vein. And this vein has got some muscular flaps like this all throughout. And what are these muscular flaps known as? These muscular flaps are known as valves. So valves are not only in the heart, valves are also inside the veins. Then what was the job of the valve we studied?
Backflow.
Prevent backflow. तो जैसे ही small amount of blood has entered, जैसे ही small amount of blood has filled in, this valve will close down. This valve will close and not allow the backflow happen. So the last difference you write down for arteries do not possess valves. Arteries do not possess valves. देखो, arteries do not possess valves and veins possess valves. They possess valves and the function remains the same all over the body. Prevents backflow. Arteries do not possess valves. Veins, you will write, possess valves. They possess valves, many.
Oh, what is the color of vein?
Color of vein. There is no color of the vein. The entire vein, if the blood can be drained out, it is just smooth muscles, colorless. The vessel has no color. Talk about the blood color. The blood color, I talk about the blood color of the vein, dark red. That's one. Vein or artery का अलग से कोई color नहीं. It is just a muscle.
This is the vein, right? The blue.
It is the blue. It is a vein. The color of the blood is dark red. I mentioned also this. Color blue, green क्यों दिखता है? Only because of the skin proteins के वजह से it appears blue. But यहाँ से जैसे तुम syringe से blood निकालोगे, it is dark red. वो blue कभी भी नहीं दिखता. So the blood is dark red. No, smooth muscles light pink कभी नहीं होता. Light pink is only because of the blood vessels around it. Blood vessels की वजह से that color. Even the lungs, pink is color. You blood vessels around it. Otherwise it is colorless. Smooth muscles, cardiac muscles. Otherwise they are all colorless. They are all colorless. Clear till here? All of you clear till here? Read this part of the chapter even in your textbook. Go through this part of the chapter even in your textbook. Diagrams, what I mentioned, I think I gave you 2-3 weeks time. Next class, both the diagrams will be over. You elementary के लिए तो almost 3 weeks से भी ज़्यादा हो गया. This is correct. So suppose I'll give you the notes. I'll give you. This deoxygenated, this oxygenated. Arteries, body, veins,
Deoxygenated and artery in general carries oxygen. But फिर भी मैम रुकाएगी even though you like class में मैम ने क्या बोला था क्लास के बात कर कर जो उल्टा और डांट पड़ेगी ये फालतू करे
क्यों नहीं?
क्योंकि मैं ये बना
कि जरूरत नहीं है वो बनाने की।
अच्छा था फिर
क्या कर रहे हो?
खराब होने में टाइम
डायग्राम बनाएगा वहाँ पे, बोलेंगे डायग्राम बनाने।
साइकिल इधर है, दो गाड़ियां
ये चलना नहीं है।
आपने खरीदी आप लेके गए थे
आ रहा ये
क्यों
देख
लेके
ये
गए
बैठे।
मैंने मना किया था
रुक जा।
मैंने मना किया था
अरे तो मैंने बचाया
चंदा मानी खाना
बैठ
पड़ेगा
के बैठा है।
अभी रुकना लेके आ रहा हूँ मैं
आप देख लो
नहीं